The modern family.
The modern family.
Let us bridge the gap between generations. Let us shape up the modern family.
I remember when I first met you, I felt that God answered my call. There was that one place I always thought about, and I just wanted to be there with you. The place that no eye has ever seen, the place that no heart has ever perceived.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most graceful. Peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Dear listeners, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to a brand new day and a brand new show, The Modern Family, with a new topic. A topic that is important, and we hope that we could share our thoughts with you, and you share your thoughts with us today. The topic today would be about raising brilliant children, brilliance in children. How do we nurture brilliance? How do we notice if there is a genius amongst us? Define the word genius. And what is out there for us in Oman to help us raise and nurture and assist our children, our gifted ones, to be one day geniuses. And with us today is Dr. Abdullah bin Muhammad bin Ahmed Al-Mahrouqi, Director of Innovation at the Research Council. Welcome, Dr. Abdullah.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you very much for accepting the invitation. Before we start, Dr. Abdullah, Hatim, I've read a very sad story today on the Times of Oman. Again, it could be somewhat related to what we are going to talk about. Enthusiastic parents who would like to see their children achieve something. But it ended in a tragedy, really. A 7-year-old died yesterday out of dehydration after his parents forced him to fast. So he was forced to fast and was not allowed to break his fast. They tried to wake him up in the afternoon after his nap. He did not respond. 2 hours before breaking fast, he was taken to hospital, but he was pronounced dead. So we actually urge parents who encourage children not to force them to fast. Encourage them. Okay, I know everyone would be very happy to see their children fast a full day in Ramadan, but please, please look after your children, teach them, guide them, but do not force them. It is not compulsory for children under puberty age to fast. So please don't push them to do something that they cannot handle. If you see them able, then by all means, but leave them choose when they can fast and when they can't.
This is very tragic, Dr. Wael, what you just mentioned, and what you said is very, very true. It's not an obligation on the child under the age of puberty to fast, and at the same time, it's a gradual process. I think we all went through the process, but gradually. I remember when we started fasting when I was like 6 or 7, and we started with a half day of fasting, and then 1 day of fasting, and you know, and there was always encouragement. If you can, it is better. If you can't, then you also get a reward that you have
and
tried.
And sometimes they even tell us, you can drink water, but you're still fasting.
You're still fasting.
It's a good way to teach children.
The whole point for them is not to continue fasting for the whole day. Is the whole point of it is to get them into the mood of fasting and sharing this responsibility with the adults. It feels good when they are breaking their fast with their parents. It shows that they are mature, they are responsible. But the whole process is not to force them into this.
Our thoughts with the family, and condolences to them. And probably the best condolences we can pay to them is say that your child is definitely in a better place. They are definitely in a much better place, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen them to be in a better place to welcome you, inshallah, as a family again in paradise. Dr. Abdullah, welcome again. And who better than you to talk about brilliance and brilliance in children? Director of Innovation at Research Council. We would like to know, first of all, what is a brilliant child? Is it someone who is extremely brainy and can solve algorithms at the age of 2? Is that a good definition of a brilliant child?
Well, thank you very much for having me on this valuable program. And the incidents we've been just talking about, if I may comment on that one, it's tragic, but at the same time now, your program is adding value to the society. I managed to listen to a couple of your programs, and I found them very informative, very enriching, and they're really adding a great value to the Omani family. And maybe to extend the piece of advice is really to take into what Hatim has said, is to tap up the potentials of our children gradually, and you build up on that one. Nothing will come in once. So that is a very important thing. Now going back to your question, talking about brilliance in children, I think it's very important to start with is to differentiate between two major aspects when we talk about brilliance in children. Talking about two terminologies. One of them is gifted and the other one is talented. Now when we talk about gifted, we are talking about those children or kids who have got innate capabilities or abilities in one or more of academic subjects. So here we're talking about those students in schools who are exhibiting abnormal ability in, for example, math or science or chemistry, and it tends to be more of innate ability, and those we call them gifted children. The other category is when we call them talented, and here we're speaking of children who are have got practical skills in specific areas such as music, sports, creative arts, performing arts, and then they tend to have more of talented. We call them more of talented students rather than gifted. And then these skills they can be innate, but also they can be developing as the child grows. So this is a very important thing to differentiate between these two terminologies.
It's interesting that you mentioned the word talented or gifted, because when I was reading about the topic, the word genius is somewhat debatable. How can you quantify genius? How could you label someone genius? Even Mensa, the body that actually tests an IQ of children, does not have any sort of definition for genius, and they would rather use the word gifted rather than the word genius.
I think it's more of a subjective word. So if we want to throw a quick word on somebody who is really smart and we say he or she is a genius,
it is more cultural.
It's more cultural, yes.
Dr. Abdullah, I was just wondering, you distinguish between the two, the talented and the gifted. Now, where does a child who has the ability to invent, to create something new, fall in this category? Is he gifted or is he talented?
Well, it can be either or both. And this is why now, as the child grows, then you're looking at his innovative capabilities, and that has to be taken also in a gradual process to tap up that potential. But it can be either of the two skills or combined.
And does it have to be in any particular field that is commonly known to parents, or a child could be genius but might not show any signs initially? I don't know. Normally, the genius, how parents would classify a genius is someone who is good at school. Is that a good way of defining a gifted child or a talented one?
Yes, I think we are looking at a couple of exceptional skills that we are trying to observe in our children, and those will give us a kind of reflection on to what extent our children are gifted or talented. And if you allow me, I would give you a few examples.
Okay.
Usually, you're looking at students who can read and write at the very early age, and then we'll also be talking about what age you're talking about and what kind of comparisons we're talking about. You're talking about those kids who have got outstanding reasoning ability. So if you throw a question to them, why do we build flyovers? Then they should be able to justify it in a very rational manner without having the background of it. The other one is like learning quickly and easily, and also ability to recall information. This is another kind of skills we're looking at the talented students. And of course now to develop large vocabulary, but not also memorizing vocabulary, but more of appropriate usage of those vocabularies.
Yeah.
So they tend to be automatically linking between the vocabulary and the usage. Also they tend to develop deep interest in particular topic over the extended period of time. So if you give them a task to execute, they will not give up because of challenges and problems associated with it, but they'll keep working on it until they perform it.
Yeah.
And they tend to show greater curiosity, imagination, and originality in their thinking. And this tends to be more of evident as you're dealing with your child and observing how he's critically thinking about various issues and questioning you and talking to you and trying to get various answers to different things happening. Of course now, another one is unusual sense of humor. So they tend to be quite sensitive in the way they're dealing with things and interacting with their mates. And of course now they tend to have a peculiar kind of or extra questioning attitude. So they keep asking so many questions. And sometimes it goes to a level where the parents getting annoyed and they try to push their child to go and sit aside and keep quiet.
That's absolutely true.
But also the very important thing is they tend to be very constant performers. So for example in school, you'll find them they're constant performers. If they stick to being the top of the class, they'll always try to maintain that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're driven by great passion.
Okay.
That's kind of things we're talking about. But of course now at the same time, maybe it's very, very important at certain stage, we also talk about some negative and this is more of a positive aspects.
Yes.
But sometimes there might be some negative aspects associated with talented and smart students that if you don't understand them, they may give a wrong impression to the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about maintaining a particular level of performance at school, there are other kids who work very hard and obtain sort of very stable marks at school, but they might not be particularly gifted in any particular way. So are the standardized general exams in public schools are an indicator or a good indicator of a brilliant child?
I think what we have observed from various schools and interacting with our children, that the kids themselves, they tend to differentiate themselves automatically.
Yeah.
So those talented ones, you find them doing least at home, but performing best. And if you push them to go and study or revise, they'll tell you, don't push me to go and study and revise. I'm going to score A's and nothing else you should ask me on top of that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you keep watching them, they sit at home, playing all the time, watching television, but they keep scoring A's, and not maybe only in some subjects, but some of them they tend to be very outstanding in all subjects.
Yeah.
And they're doing the least revision.
I was just wondering, sometimes you have gifted students that will accelerate very well in a particular area of their interest and will do bad in other areas. Is this very common in gifted children? Like some of them, they might be very good in certain skills outside school, and they do very bad in school, but they turn up to be inventors and scientists. And so, is this a trend with gifted children, or is it something exceptional?
I think it's very much related to their own interest. And for example, those who are gifted in math, you'll find them always very driven and attracted by anything related to numbers. And they may not pick up at a very early age, but at certain time they do pick up. So it seems there is also kind of momentum which drives the student to tap up that potential. Sometimes it can be hidden, but also at certain age it tends to be more prevalent, and then you tend to observe in your child.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you, Doctor, is this genetic? Does it can you inherit genius from your parents or from your relatives or somewhere, or is it something that is unique to the individual child?
Well, based on what we have been reading and what we hear, it's nothing related genetically. Although successful parents, they tend to have successful children. Maybe they're driven by having them as their idol, and usually successful parents, they will keep pushing their children.
Yes.
So usually find if the father and the mother are doctors, medical doctors, they will tend to push their sons to become medical doctors. And the whole family can be driven to success, not because of being gifted but it's of a hard work.
But rather the power of parents,
Yes.
More educated parents are trying to, they are aware of ways to enhance or nurture the curiosity of children.
And determination.
Yeah. So, okay, we would like to go back to one point, Hatim, you mentioned, which is some children might not do really well at school. But it doesn't mean that they are not geniuses or gifted, because I don't look at the way we judge children from school is a good way or as a good indicator. These tests and these exams only tell you something about the relationship between you or the child and the subject matter that the government or the public schools have chosen to examine their level of knowledge, and that's it. It is not an indicator in any way of IQ. Probably an IQ test is much more relevant. So do we have any IQ test facilities or programs here in Oman?
For children, I've not heard of. They may have it in some vocational institutes. But now I think I'll go back to when you talk about, to emphasize on what you have elaborated on. It exactly falls on the negative aspects in talented and gifted children. So, for example, now you may find the students, they get bored very quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you have a child, when you come and talk to him about something interesting, he finds it boring because it doesn't fall in the category of things of his interest. And that is something very important, very peculiar in talented and gifted children. At the same time, there are a couple of other things, like sometimes they tend to be impolite, even when especially when they argue with their parents regarding any topic they feel more comfortable with and they feel more secure with, they feel more advanced in understanding the topic. And if you tend to negotiate and discuss it and elaborate on it, they get easily irritated
and frustrated,
and then they tend to be also impolite. And this is very important for the parents here to understand that it's not because that the child is impolite by nature, but it's driven by that talent. Another things like to have fewer friends, so they tend to stay confined or isolated, and they have least interaction and ability to socialize with other students. And this is maybe driven by they spend so much time thinking on their own and trying to understand things, So this is another interesting aspect we see in talented children.
Both aspects that you have mentioned are aspects that might drive parents to be worried rather than be happy.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
So it's good that you mentioned these. So we raise the awareness of people that if you see any of these things, one, do not be alarmed.
Yes.
Plus, also, don't just raise your hopes too high yet. You need to explore further.
Absolutely.
This brings us to the next point, which is the age group. Is there a particular age group where the parents can identify special gifts in their child?
As far as we have seen, also there is no age related. Especially if you take it further now to talking about talents and gifted students, as well as innovative students now, those who can come up with a very unique ideas, but also they tend to be capable of driving that innovative idea into business.
Yeah.
And we came to know that there was a student about 5 or 6 years of age, and they managed to secure the first patent in the United States. And simply that was raised by curiosity, where this child, they have this round type locks in the doors, which children tend to find it a bit slippery and difficult to open and handle. And then she kept complaining to her father that this door is not easy to open and manage. And she said, if you are inside the room and if anything wrong happens, you cannot open the door and go out, so you have to wait for your parents to come and open the door. And this child kept thinking about how to improve the mechanism, to improve the grasp of the grip of the knob of the door. And she worked on it until she came up with an idea. And luckily that her father is a lawyer. Okay. And
that's very handy.
Yes. And at the same time, he had a small workshop at home. So he started to ask his child to draw it on a piece of paper. And then he transformed it into a prototype in their workshop. And then they took it now to patenting agency, and they managed to secure a patent for that. And it was one of the youngest patent registered for a child, and then it was transformed into business now.
See?
Whether they maintain the right of it. Yeah, this is just an example about talking of age.
And what you mentioned is very, very important, is the support of the parent.
Exactly.
And not ignoring the ideas of your child.
Absolutely.
And the brilliance is not, and the brilliance is not from the child's side only, but it's from the parent's side.
Yes.
Because a brilliant parent, one who is capable to identify a gift and build upon it.
Yeah.
And assist the child to reach their potential.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
so this is a brilliant example. There are other examples of a 16-year-old, also from the United States, who his parents helped him until he discovered a way, a very quick way and a very fast way to discover cancerous cells. And he's only 16, so he's still a schoolboy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even here in the Research Council, from time to time we get calls from students from various schools, and they call and tell you we have got a very innovative idea. And if you listen to them carefully, they tend to have very good, interesting ideas. And some of them now, they have taken it on their own initiative until a stage of prototyping.
Wow.
And some of them now, they go beyond that and start to talk about patenting and intellectual property rights.
Yeah.
So this tells you that some of the students, they tend to emerge different regardless the environment they're living in. And this is another interesting aspect that we should look into our society.
Now that you've mentioned the Research Council and that students are calling them, we were going to touch on this later on, but now that you have mentioned it, what are the facilities or sort of assistance the Research Council might offer these callers or these gifted young Omanis?
Actually, at the Research Council, we did launch 2 programs. One is meant to introduce innovation at school level. So we did develop 5 incubators in various schools here in Muscat to start with as a piloting. And then now here it will entertain and nurture talented students at school level. And this is a piloting project for 3 years. And then the outcome of this project now, it will be taken further by the Ministry of Education and the Research Council to further develop it, and then they will see how to expand it throughout Oman. The other interesting program, which is called Supporting Innovation at Society or Community and Individuals. So those individuals who are calling us in the Research Council, we take by their hands and we support them through a very sophisticated process, and we do fund the whole innovation from A to Z until it materializes into business.
That's
so,
brilliant.
Yes.
It's brilliant news. I mean, we never had these opportunities, and we only used to hear about these initiatives and support in other countries, but now alhamdulillah Oman has developed a lot and we are on the right track, I believe.
Actually, we are processing now the first batch of Omani innovators. There are 25 individuals, and we are taking through the process of filtration, and hopefully we'll fund at least 10 of them to start with, to materialize their innovative ideas into commercial business.
MashaAllah,
so
all the very best.
Process,
all the very best. I wish
Dr.
you all the very
how
best.
are they as individuals, these 25?
I think some of them are really talented and very smart, and they're driven by business. And some of them, they have already spent from their own pocket 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 riyals already from their own pockets.
Because they believe in the idea.
Yes, just to prove the concept that they can take it into business. And some of them already, they have prototypes or mini samples proving that they can go into a very big business.
MashaAllah. See, we have we've heard about special programs for talented children in schools in many other countries, or even sometimes very highly talented and gifted children are being sort of skipped. They skip certain grades. Do you think that is a good idea, that Oman should start looking at this type of programs? We hear about 14-year-old child being admitted to Harvard. Can we do that? Do you think it's possible?
Well, I think everything is possible as far as there is determination, and we need to care about talented students. Now, with this respect, you should look into mainly 2 scenarios. One scenario is where you pick up talented students and gifted students from different schools, and you put them all in one specialized school, which manages talents, or you develop capabilities within every school in Oman, and then they take care of the students within its compound wall. So these are 2 approaches, and maybe to decide on which one is better, you need proper feasibility study. You need to do some background work.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Before we go to the break, how can parents identify if they have gifted children or gifted child at home?
I think this is quite a lengthy bit of topic that maybe need a lot of elaboration.
Yeah.
But now here we're talking about parents who should start by being very observant, and they should look into certain intelligence areas in their kids. And there are about 8 of them. I'll just mention them quickly, and if you needed to go into any of them,
we'll go into details after the break. If we just mention it now.
Now we're talking about interpersonal skills. We're talking about verbal skills. We're talking about logical skills. You're talking about intrapersonal skills, and also musical, natural skills, as well as visual and physical. So those are the kind of 8 intelligence areas we're looking at.
Yeah, I think the most common one is the analytical intelligence, or the you mentioned a different name for it there, which is the ability to process information and do mathematics, solve mathematical problems.
Yeah.
But the one that is very important, which is the interpersonal skills or emotional intelligence, that tends to be ignored a lot of times, which is one of the most important type of intelligence skills.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear listeners, we'll come back to you after the break, and you can call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. Stay tuned. We'll come back after the break.
Oh, doctor, my throat is really sore.
Turned up the AC full blast?
No, doctor.
Binging on ice cream, are you?
Not really.
You've got the new Hayyak Liberty plan from Omantel.
Yes, I do. How did you guess?
That's right. At just 89 bezos for 2 hours with Omantel's Hayyak Liberty plan, you can now talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. For details, call us on 1234 or visit omantel.om.
The Modern Family.
The moms, naturally, Allah has given them certain gifts. Like parenting comes more naturally to a mother. Allah has given her that gift. He just makes her nurturing, soft, caring, concerned, just naturally. Fathers have to work on it. You're sitting at home, your child falls down. Who gets up immediately? Oh, mera bacha, oh, yeah. Who does that? The father? The father's sitting there, pick yourself up, child. In Urdu, say, kuch nahi hua. Chalo, go back. Dust it off. Nothing. That's nothing. Don't worry about it. Just a little bit of blood. The mom will go crazy. It's natural to her. I'm telling the fathers here, if we want our children to be raised in Islam, the first thing we need to be is their best friend. And that takes work. It takes serious work. Parents here, fathers here, you guys have to get in shape. I'm serious, you have to get in shape. Not for yourself, for your kids. You come home, your kids want to play with you, and you just, Abba, pick me up, throw me around, do this, you do a little bit of that, and you're like, Abba's got to lie down, hold on. That's not how you raise kids. Taking our kids hiking, playing sports with them, taking them to the backyard. Even if they're playing video games, play video games with them. Play with them. Play the Wii with them. Bowl with them. I don't care. Just do stuff with your kids. It's a critical part of opening barriers. So they can talk to you about anything. Because I'm telling you, when they reach a certain age, the need to talk to someone will always be there. You would rather that person be you, not some non-Muslim friend who will give non-Muslim kinds of advice. You would rather that be yourself. You don't want to discover your child has developed another personality later on in life, because you never talk to them, and eventually you actually engaged in a conversation, and you realize, whoa, this is a different person. Who are you? You've been living under my house all these years? When did this happen? Oh, it done been happened, Daddy. It been happened. You just never knew. You were busy. You have to make special time for your children. It has to be just their time. And if you have multiple kids, you have to go out of your way to make sure each child gets individual attention and time from you. No one else, you. No toys, no gadgets, no nothing. Just you. It has to be there. It's absolutely critical.
The Modern Family.
Dear listeners, welcome back. You can call us on The Modern Family. The topic today is brilliance in children. How do we nurture it? You can call us on 24602058. That's 24602058. I believe we have a caller. Not yet? Right, okay. We'll take a call later on. Dr. Abdullah with us here from the Research Council. He is Director of Innovation. Dr. Abdullah, we started talking about how to notice a brilliant or a gifted child. We'll touch on that, and then we'll go on how do we nurture brilliance in children. We have a call now. Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum. Hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you, brother?
I'm fine, thank you. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Who is this?
This is Salim Al-Tawqi.
Salim Al-Tawqi. Welcome, Salim. Yes. How are you doing these fine days?
Sorry, I cannot hear properly though.
How are you doing in these fine days, last days of Ramadan?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, it's all blessings, alhamdulillah, and things are running smooth. Ibadat and everything is fine, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen.
Good. Thank you. Okay, Salim, what do you have to teach us today?
Well, I had a couple of things to add, but and then by listening, you came across all of them.
Okay.
But I had a strong point that is, I think it's really an issue if the parents are really monitoring their children, sitting with them and listening to them, then they can really tell if this kid is talented or intelligent in some areas, or he has some qualities that are unique from the others.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we'll talk more about...
Unfortunately, unfortunately, what I realized is, and it's very difficult to find incubating houses. If you notice a particular talent, you want to improve, to give the children, to give your children the opportunity to be more exposed to that area. They don't have incubating house, or maybe they are restricted with age limitation.
That is absolutely true. We don't have as yet any organizations that are ready to take up talented children. And some might suggest that, okay, go to neighboring countries or even further if you would like to nurture the child. I personally do not support that, because take a conscious decision to raise your child here in Oman, and if there isn't anything out there, why don't you start one? Start one, and people will join you step by step, and then we will have our own, and our neighboring countries will be coming here to nurture their gifted children. Isn't that an idea?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It is an idea. But if you as a parent, you cannot fulfill that, at least okay, I have to find somewhere where to improve my child. I know he has this and that talent. How to scale it up? How to give him more advances, more of what is happening around the world. That is, I find it to be very difficult.
Inshallah,
it is a good idea. It is a very good idea. And I wish we could have some place where a forum or somewhere where they can all children meet, expose themselves, or at least be together just to get the talented and sort what fits where better.
Certainly. Thank you very much for these valuable points. And we will discuss how parents could nurture these gifted children. And most of them are very easy. Now, only if it is a last resort, then you need to go out and seek somewhere better.
But if you don't have the means, then you're stuck.
Not really. Just tune in, and we'll give you the 101 on how to raise children, gifted children, inshallah. Thank you very much, Salim. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, and wish you all the best, inshallah, in your program, and Qabul Ramadan, inshallah.
Ameen. Thank you, Salim. To you too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Abdullah.
Okay, going back to the intelligence areas, and because there are 8 and may take some time, let me pick up maybe 3 or 4 and highlight on them, and then we'll see how we go. One of them is the logical skills. And this one, you're talking about kids who have been blessed with good analytical power and scientific thinking.
Yeah.
And now anything happens to them or anything facing them, and out of curiosity, they'll start to work on good reasoning of it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of the things, and then they will always raise it within the house.
Yes.
And they may discuss it with their own brothers and sisters, but also they may go back to the father and the mother. That is one of them. The second one is...
Doctor, before you continue, we have to just mention to the parents that this type of children, they ask a lot of questions.
Yes.
They want to know. So bear with them and listen to them, and at least give them the support that they need.
We also have another caller. We'll take a very quick call. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, we are fine. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I just want to make a point. You just talk about nurturing children. And you say like we could start, you wouldn't recommend to send the children abroad, but we could start one of our own places here.
Yes.
If I'm right. And then you say, and we could bring the children from neighboring countries. Now, if we would not like to send our children outside, why would we encourage other children to come to our country?
It's not about encouraging other children to come to this country, but what I'm trying to say here is that today we have nothing where we can take our children or gifted children to enhance their knowledge. I would like, and I would hope that we would start something one day that we would be the envy of other people, that other people would wish that they would come here and utilize the facilities that we have created for our children so they could learn from our experiences as well. That's what I meant.
I mean, okay, we can invite them to come and utilize
definitely
in our country, our neighboring country.
Definitely. What I'm saying is that moving from having absolutely nothing to have something that is globally renowned.
Okay, now, well, I get your point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Okay.
Dr. Weil, just to emphasize on what the sister has said and what you have said, we have a very successful initiative here in Oman. There was a man who had a son or a daughter who was facing the problem of autism. And he didn't have a place to take his child. So he decided to open a center because of this one child. And now it's a successful center, and it's the only center in Oman.
And it's catering for everybody.
And it's catering for everybody.
There you go.
Because he thought that if I wait until someone does something about it, then I'll wait forever, and my child will suffer. So he took the initiative, and he went through a difficult time until he established the center.
Yes, basically it is driven by demand.
It's driven by demand.
And who is better than to do something for your child than yourself as a parent?
Absolutely.
We shall not wait for somebody else to do it. We shall try ourselves and start something.
Yes, but the approach of what you mentioned is attracting talents. It's not only about children, but now if you look at America is built on that model, attracting talents from throughout the world, supporting them and providing with a good environment, and then they perform, and then they produce, and then the positive impact, it benefits the individual as well as the country. So that approach has been already endorsed by so many countries.
Exactly.
The other intelligent area that maybe we should touch on too is the being naturalist. So some students, they tend to be always very creative in the way they think, and they tend to be so sensitive to nature. And here we're talking mainly about ecosystems. So they will always tend to question what is happening on Earth, why we have water behaving in that way. For example, there was one question raised by a child about 7 or 8 years old. They were saying, if the Earth is suspended in space, why the water doesn't fall off? That is very interesting question, and it's driven by deep thinking. And this tells you how smart some children are in raising questions. Now, for us to imagine the Earth suspended in space, for us as adults, it took us a bit of time to grasp that and accept it.
It is a gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us at a very early stage. When we are children, we are more curious, we are more aware. And curiosity is a gift. And it is a crime that a parent might suppress this curiosity by either not answering or blaming the child for asking such useless questions. Just accept that the water is there and that's it.
Absolutely.
You've just killed the curiosity and killed any ability in the child to even perform and be unique. So curiosity is I think the main aspect of brilliance, the main drive for brilliance. So nurturing this curiosity is
and I think
very important.
The father of the child, he managed to give her the good reasoning and justification, and they said, because you've got the magnetic fields, and they're doing the job of attracting every single thing on Earth and keeping it intact. And then the child responded, MashaAllah, look at how God is wise. The wisdom. So that's the very interesting thing, how we interact with our children. And another child raised a question one day. He said, Dad, just think of if we change the whole trees that we use them for greening and landscaping in Oman, and we plant fruit-bearing trees like limes. He said, look at how much water is only spent to green. But you can do two things: green, and you produce fruits. And that kind of thinking from young children, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. This tells you how much they're sensitive to nature, and how do they think about an ecosystem. And that is very interesting and very powerful way of thinking. And it's also expressing the extreme talented thinking of little children. Yes. But again, now nobody's tapping up into that. And maybe the last one I should mention is the visual. And those kind of kids who would like to transform everything they see into pictures. And they have that power. And with time now, from the pictures, they can translate all what is in their minds. This is another thing. You know. So this is 3 amongst 7 or 8.
I think I've seen a documentary about one of these talents that you spoke about, the visual, where this young man, he has the ability to draw and to sketch. Yeah. And what he does is they take him on a helicopter on top of any famous city for 10 minutes. And he goes back to his workshop and he can sketch exactly what he saw with the very little details that are there on the pictures.
Yeah, you see, that falls in the part of what is called
photographic memory.
Photographic memory, which is part of the intrapersonal skills.
Yeah,
and this falls again in some of the students who will open the book for 20-30 minutes before the exam, and they get it all, perfectly well. You're so absolutely right. Yeah.
Now that I've listened to you, and just an idea came up. It would be very interesting to solve all our problems using children and just the ideas that they come up with. It would be a good idea to have a whole radio show or even a TV show where we present our problems that we face day to day to children, and just listen to the answers that they might give. And I believe that we would have the solutions of many of our problems just by listening to them. The way they think is different from the way we think. We think with a lot of boundaries, and we try and limit ourselves and say, oh, we can't do this. Maybe even before speaking out about the solution, we're already convinced that, this is probably not possible. There is economical implications. It might be very expensive. Children don't have that boundaries. They have the sky is the limit to them, and they would say anything. So, for example, if we present to them the problem that we have in traffic accidents, it would be very interesting to listen to them and what sort of solution they might bring. Good.
And actually, when you talk about innovation, it's always driven by crazy ideas. And some children, they tend to be very good in this because, as you said, they have an extended way of imagining and, expanded imagination system. And like us, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. One very important thing that we need to talk about today, and we have 10 minutes to cover, which is how to support brilliant children, innovative children, how to support them as parents. What are the practical steps to do?
Okay, I think to answer this question, the only way is to approach it in a very systematic way. So now we did touch up on parents being observant to their children. So the first step is to really be observant and let the children behave in their very normal and natural environment, and you keep observing them from a distance. And you should not enforce and push them to beyond their limit into what you think is right and what is wrong in terms of coming to their talents. And then you start to identify a couple of talents that your child has. And after that, you start to tap into it and selecting maybe out of 3 or 4 that you think viable ones. You select the most viable one now, and you start maybe tap into that one rather than all other superficial ones.
Good, you mentioned that you discover 2 or 3 talents. It means that there isn't anything that tells you from day one that this child is actually gifted, otherwise we'll just notice it immediately. It's good that you mentioned that, because a lot of parents have very high expectations of someone who presents a lot of signs of brilliance, but then they end up being absolutely nobody. And on the other hand, a child who is absolutely normal turns out to be a brilliant child or a brilliant young person.
Exactly.
So that's the role of the parents rather than the child himself.
Yes, and what is more interesting is the next step. When you start to shortlist those talents that you discovered, then it will be the next step. And the most important one is to sit with your child and say, look, I have seen in you that and that and that, and now I see maybe I should help you to be focused more in developing your talent in area A, for example. And then now you get his agreement, and therefore now both of you are willing to take it further.
It is always good to just talk to your children and ask open questions. And
to associate him in the decision making.
Yes, ask him open questions.
Important.
What do you think of this? Let them just think of an answer rather than ask him a question where the answer is yes or no.
Yeah, absolutely. And then now you start to move it to the next step, which is nurturing the talent in a kind of inclusive approach. And here talking about the involvement of the entire family. So it's not only you, but the father and the mother, maybe the brothers and sisters at home, and then you maybe expand it at the society level, and now you take it also to the educational entities, if they are in the KG or they are in the primary schools or at university level. Both now parties, the family and the education entity, should support each other in nurturing that talent.
Yeah.
And this is very important to make it successful.
Dr. Abdullah, what about the talents that your child might have that is a threat to them? For example, before the show we were discussing about hackers, and we said that hackers are very brilliant and very gifted, but sometimes without the right guidance, they might lead them. The hacking might lead them to very bad consequences, criminal acts. So if you're a parent and you find out that your child has a talent or a gift in an area which might be a threat to them, what is the right way to approach?
Okay, I think if you look at by nature, all human beings, every single thing can be driven into the positive or the negative side of it. And I think what is important that you sit with your child and make him really understand and believe in the positive aspects of that tool. And it should be driven in that direction. And you should also coordinate with relevant stakeholders so they can make use of that talent. And maybe the other thing is, which is very important now, if the child has been pushed to the limit and they manage to successfully reach the plateau of his talent, maybe it's very important now to find a proper placement for the child or for that graduate, especially when they graduate from university, for example, at that level. And here we're talking now about embedding the national system in managing talents.
Yeah.
So,
I have a few tips that might help parents. One, we mentioned that talking to children and asking open questions to just stimulate thinking. Secondly is reading. Researchers have found out that reading and teaching children to read, even either by letting them read by themselves or read to children, is a very good indicator for school success. So read with them. Don't be afraid of using very complex words with children that they might not understand. Otherwise they will never understand. Use them, and by using them repeatedly in different contexts, they would link the way that word to the meanings, and they'll be able to use it. So you're encouraging using more complicated or complex vocabulary. With reading as well, it's a good foundation for learning, and it's the best way to enhance brilliance in children. Another way is how we encourage children. When we see a child who is brilliant and gifted, there are two ways to praise them. One, to say that you are very smart. And this is probably the majority are doing this and not knowing that there are negative effects in that. The other way of encouraging the child is saying that, oh, I really like the way you answered the question. I really like the way that you have tackled the problem, or whatever they did. Because in this way you're actually focusing their attention into the way they have attempted the problem and the way they solved the problem, and that it needed a lot of thinking and a lot of determination. The other type, who are used to be called smart or geniuses, at the end of the day they will always be keen to reach a goal very quickly and get the reward very quickly. And if they are faced with any sort of challenges, or the result doesn't come very easily, they would be let down very easily, and they would just give up.
Yes, because now praising the child, as you said, overwhelmingly, it may create a negative impact where the child believes I'm in a perfection status.
And I'm smart, so I should always reach the result very quickly and before everyone else.
Yes.
So that becomes the main goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than focusing on how to solve a problem, and the harder it is, the harder I will work.
Yes. And also to associate them within the household to solve problems. And challenging, facing the family. And sometimes if you associate them in solving your own work problems maybe, that can be also very enlightening to them. So they start to think about proper career, challenging, facing your real world.
It's also very good to make them independent when they try and solve problems. Do not answer it, because if you do the thinking, they will not.
Of course.
I find it's very useful when children come and ask a question is bombard them with even more questions.
Yes.
Bombard them with more questions. Let them think.
You should trigger their thinking.
Trigger their thinking. And if they are stuck, go there and approach them and ask them, what's wrong? They will start talking about the problem, where they started and where they ended. And just by talking about the problem, suddenly they've realized the solution. And you didn't do anything other than just go there and ask what's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So there are many ways that have been tried and tested, and we encourage parents to allow children to do a lot of things.
Express also.
And not to induce a lot of rules.
Yes.
This is the old school. A lot of rules, and we get done for it. A lot of times that we allow children to do whatever they want. You're not disciplining them. But I think a lot of rules might just cap their capabilities and stop them from growing.
Yeah.
I'm very, very much interested in specific games or activities that we can share with our children to help them nurture their talent or gift, or to utilize their time in a very positive way that will help them develop these skills. Are there any particular like websites or any particular activities that help raise the IQ of the child or something like that?
Yeah, what I have observed with some schools, they do push their students to go into competitions through the internet, especially on math, for example, on math day. And a lot of students are already endorsing that. But I would rather favor more of physical games rather than electronic games. Because that tends to confine the student, the children in the way they're thinking, and it's more of a consistent way of doing things.
I think there are also, just to answer your question as well, I think you could use the internet for IQ tests. There are a lot of IQ tests, but try to avoid websites that are not official and not recognized. You could go to the more recognized websites like Mensa, for example, and see if there is any online IQ tests. And you could try and just play with the child and see what they score.
Why not?
I'm afraid that we might score even lower than them.
Of course.
Do you have any examples that you could share with us of anything that you came across, Dr. Abdullah, of brilliant children, or a good example of how parents nurtured any particular hobby within our society, or a story that you heard that you would like to share with the listeners?
I think once when I was at University of Nizwa and I was teaching environmental sciences course, and it's called Man and the Environment, and I was really emphasizing a lot on waste management and how much do we generate waste and how that creating a big burden to the government and costing a lot of money, etc., etc. And I found out by the end of the year, some students, they came back to me and they came up with a lot of interesting ideas on how to recycle various material. And they went into in-depth calculation on how much waste generated by only ordering parcel food to their rooms. So, and then some of them, they went into the internet and they searched about the best methodologies of, for example, recycling aluminium and plastic bags and glass, for example. This is a very good example on how we trigger thinking by associating all different elements on the kind of problems facing us. So when you talk about waste, you give it all dimensions that causing threat to the environment, to our planet, to our system, to the human health, and then that will trigger the proper thinking on how we manage it.
Dr. Abdullah, when we come to the concept of think tanks, can we involve little children in the concept of think tanks to have their own groups of trying to figure out solutions for problems. Like we have think tanks for adults and for states, but for children as well, if we give them the opportunity to join these think tanks.
Now, I'm sure it will have a very interesting dimension, especially now if you go to various schools in Europe where they cluster students to interact and learn on round table rather than students sitting on individual tables.
Yes.
And this is acting more of like a think tank when you give them a puzzle or a problem to solve, and then they can interact and express their opinions freely. And here also you may have a tendency of a dominance of talented ones on each table. So this is another interesting way to bring up the talents in each table.
Yeah, because most of these, or some of these gifted kids, they're isolated, they like to work alone. Yeah. So it's good to develop their social skills with other students. And even you can find out the quality of a leader among them.
Yes. Yeah.
Dr. Abdullah, thank you very much for enlightening us in this topic today. It's a topic that we need to cover in a lot of days. One show is not enough, but unfortunately this is what we have, and I hope that we have at least sparked some thoughts into the minds of parents listening out there, so they could help their children towards a better life and a better intellectual life as well. What I would like to end with here on the topic is what the late Steve Jobs said. He said, pass to your kids these three things. 1, love what you do. Secondly, think different. 3rd, get it right. So think differently. So if a child comes to you and says, there is this school project and this is how I want to do it, don't let him do that, and let him think of another 2 ways to do that problem. Let him think of alternatives rather than just being stuck with one idea.
So it is scenario-based approach.
Yes, and then get it right. Let him do it in the best way he can. Dear listeners, thank you very much for listening to us. We'll see you inshallah on Saturday. If you haven't catched this program today live, then you can follow us at 9 o'clock. There is a repeat at 9 o'clock daily. So we'll see you on Saturday inshallah. From me, Wa'il, assalamu alaikum, and we leave you with Hatim with the thought of the day.
I think I forgot the thought of the day.
You thought it? Okay. I think time out. It's time for news. Thank you very much, Hatim, for that, dear listeners. Assalamu alaikum.
The modern family. Let us bridge the gap between generations. Let us shape up the modern family. The modern family. Join the discussion and give us your feedback. Live with Hatim Al-Abdussalam and Dr. Wa'il Al-Harasi. The modern family. I always thought about, and I just wanted